The planet Zaya was a quiet, lonely place. Once it had been full of life. Tall golden towers, beautiful gardens, and shining cities. But now it was covered in dust and ruins. The people of Zaya, called the Ziyari, lived in fear, hiding in underground shelters. They were small, delicate creatures with large violet eyes and thin, silver skin. Once they had been part of the Great Galactic Council, but that was long ago. Now they were abandoned, ignored, and left to survive on their own. For centuries, the Ziyari had called for help. Their planet had been attacked again and again. Pirates, slavers, and warlords came to take whatever they wanted. The Ziyari had no army, no weapons to fight back. They were a peaceful race, skilled in art, music, and science, but that did not matter to the cruel universe. The strong ruled, and the weak were forgotten. Every time the Ziyari sent a message to the Galactic Council, they received the same answer. Your problems are not our concern. Other alien races looked away, pretending not to see their suffering. To them, the Ziyari were a lost cause, a weak species that would soon disappear. But everything changed when the humans arrived. A new hope. The Ziyari first saw the strange, metallic ships in their sky one quiet evening. They were different from the warships of the raiders. These ships moved with precision, scanning the surface, but not attacking. The Ziyari elders watched from the underground shelters, afraid but curious. Would these newcomers bring more suffering? Or would they simply ignore them, just like the rest of the galaxy? Then, for the first time in 300 years, the Ziyari received an unexpected message. This is Captain Elias Carter of the Terran Coalition. We come in peace. We mean you no harm. Please respond. The Ziyari elders hesitated. Could this be a trick? Would these humans betray them, just like the others? But they had no choice. Their people were starving. Their homes were falling apart. They had to take the risk. A weak, static-filled voice replied. We are the Ziyari. Please, help us. The human decision. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge of his ship, listening carefully. He had read the reports on the Ziyari, a lost civilization, once part of the Galactic Council but now forgotten. The records said they were weak, unable to defend themselves. Many in the galaxy believed it was better to let them fade away. But Elias did not believe that. The first landing team stepped onto Zaya's surface, wearing protective suits against the harsh conditions. What they saw was heartbreaking. Thin, starving Ziyari watched them with wide, frightened eyes. Their shelters were crumbling, their food supplies nearly gone. Children huddled close to their mothers, too weak to cry. The humans saw no weapons, no soldiers, only families struggling to survive. Elias clenched his fists. How could the galaxy ignore this? How could they let an entire race suffer like this, while they lived in comfort? One of his officers, Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, looked at him. "Sir," she said softly, "what do we do?" There was only one answer. Elias turned to his crew. "We help them," he said. "We're not leaving them like this." A new beginning. The next day, massive human supply ships arrived in Zaya's orbit. Crates of food, medicine, and clean water were sent down. Engineers set up power generators, bringing light to the dark shelters. Doctors treated the sick, while human scientists examined the soil, searching for ways to restore the land. The Ziyari could not believe it. No one had ever helped them before. No one had ever cared. An old Ziyari elder, his silver skin wrinkled with age, approached Captain Elias. His voice trembled. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Elias smiled. "Because it's the right thing to do." The Ziyari did not know what to say. For the first time in centuries, they felt something strange, something they had forgotten long ago. Hope. But in the dark corners of space, others were watching. The pirates, the slavers, the warlords who had fed on Zaya's suffering were not pleased. And the Galactic Council, which had ignored the Ziyari for so long, now had a new problem. The humans had arrived. and they were not leaving. The Ziyari could not believe their eyes. For centuries, they had called for help, sending desperate messages into the void, only to be ignored. But now, before them, stood tall, armored beings from a world they had never seen. Humans. They were unlike any race the Ziyari had ever encountered. Strong, broad-shouldered, and filled with energy, the humans moved with confidence as they distributed supplies, repaired broken shelters, and helped the sick. It felt like a dream. A nervous welcome. Captain Elias Carter stood at the center of the main Ziyari settlement, watching his crew work. Engineers set up energy stations, providing power to the underground shelters. Medics treated malnourished children, giving them food and water. For the first time in 300 years, the Ziyari no longer had to fear starvation or darkness. But despite the help, many Ziyari still watched from the shadows, uncertain and afraid. They had been betrayed before. Would the humans leave just like the others? The Ziyari elder, Valen, cautiously approached Elias. His thin silver hands trembled, and his violet eyes studied the human captain carefully. "Why are you here?" Valen finally asked, his voice weak but steady. Elias looked at him and smiled. "Because you needed help." The elder's lips pressed together. He had heard many promises in his lifetime. False hope, empty words. But something in this human's eyes was different. He did not see pity. He saw determination. "And when your ships leave?" Valen asked. "Will we be forgotten again?" Elias knelt slightly, bringing himself to the elder's level. His voice was firm. "We're not leaving. Not until you can stand on your own." Valen inhaled sharply. Could it be true? Could they finally have found true allies? The Council's warning. Far from Zaya, in the heart of the Galactic Council, news of the humans' actions spread like wildfire. The Council was made up of many powerful alien civilizations, each controlling entire star systems. They did not like unexpected changes. And now, humanity, a young and unpredictable species, was interfering in a matter they had chosen to ignore. Ambassador Tovak of the Valkyrie Dominion, a cold and powerful reptilian species, spoke first. His sharp teeth gleamed under the chamber's light. "The Ziyari are a dead race," he hissed. "We abandoned them for a reason. If the humans wish to waste their resources, let them. But they must not interfere with the natural order." Another ambassador, a tall, insect-like being from the Turkai Collective, clicked its mandibles. "Humanity's actions could cause disruptions. We must warn them." And so a message was sent, a warning to the Terran Coalition. The arrival of trouble. Back on Zaya, the humans worked tirelessly. More Ziyari came out of hiding, cautiously accepting the aid. They watched in awe as human engineers repaired their broken farming systems, making it possible to grow food again. For the first time in generations, laughter filled the underground shelters. But not everyone was happy. One evening, a human soldier, Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, was patrolling the outskirts of the settlement when her communicator buzzed. "Captain, we have incoming ships, unidentified." Elias's expression darkened. "How many?" "5. No, 7. Small-class raiders." The Ziyari, overhearing the conversation, froze in terror. They knew what this meant. The pirates had returned. The human response. In the past, when the pirate warlords came, there was only suffering. They stole food, took captives, and left destruction behind. The Ziyari had no army, no weapons. They could only hide and hope to be spared. But this time, the humans were here. Elias turned to his crew. "Battle stations. No one touches this planet while we're standing." The Ziyari gasped. Were the humans going to fight for them? As the pirate ships entered the atmosphere, they were met with something they had never expected: resistance. The Terran Coalition's warships, though small in number, were far more advanced than the outdated pirate vessels. With expert precision, the humans intercepted the raiders before they could even land. The battle was over in minutes. The Ziyari stood in stunned silence as the humans drove the invaders away. No one had ever fought for them before. No one had ever cared. As Elias watched the fleeing pirate ships disappear into the sky, he turned to Valen. "You're under our protection now. Asterisk, 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 no one will hurt you again." Tears formed in the elder's violet eyes. The Ziyari had been abandoned for centuries. But now, for the first time, they were not alone. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay. The battle had ended, but the Ziyari still couldn't believe it. For generations, they had known only fear. Whenever the pirate raiders arrived, they hid, hoping to be spared. Their people had suffered because no one cared to protect them. But now, everything had changed. The humans had fought for them. Not because they wanted something in return. Not because they wanted to rule. They fought because it was the right thing to do. The aftermath of the battle. Captain Elias Carter stood in the command center, watching a holographic map of Zaya. The pirate ships had been completely driven away, and no casualties had been reported on the human side. But he knew this was only the beginning. He turned to his lieutenant, Sarah Monroe. "Get a full report from our teams. I want to know if the Ziyari suffered any losses." Sarah nodded. "Yes, sir." Elias looked around at the Ziyari who had gathered nearby. Some were staring at the sky, as if expecting the pirates to return. Others stood in small groups, whispering in disbelief. They had never been saved before. The Ziyari elder, Valen, slowly approached Elias. His old eyes were filled with something Elias had not seen before. "Hope. You did not have to fight for us," Valen said softly. Elias smiled. "Yes, we did." Valen studied the human captain for a long moment before nodding. "Then I believe the Ziyari have finally found true friends." The Council's ultimatum. In the vast halls of the Galactic Council, whispers of the battle on Zaya spread quickly. The humans had not only interfered, but they had defied the Council's silent decision to abandon the Ziyari. This was not acceptable. Ambassador Tovak of the Valkyrie Dominion slammed his clawed hand against the table. "The humans must leave that planet at once. This is an offense to the balance of the galaxy." The Turkey ambassador clicked its mandibles. "If they refuse, we may have to take action." A message was sent to the Terran Coalition, warning them that their involvement on Zaya must end immediately. The humans had a choice: leave the Ziyari to their fate or face consequences. A difficult choice. The message arrived at Elias's command center the next morning. He read it carefully, his jaw tightening. The Galactic Council had spoken. Leave Zaya or risk conflict. Sarah Monroe crossed her arms. "They're afraid of us." Elias sighed. "No, they're afraid of change." The Council had ignored the Ziyari for centuries. Now that humans had stepped in to help, the Council saw it as a threat. But Elias knew that leaving Zaya now would doom the Ziyari once again. He turned to his crew. "We're not going anywhere. A future worth fighting for." Over the next few days, the humans worked even harder. Engineers helped rebuild homes, and farmers taught the Ziyari how to use new agricultural technology. Medical teams treated the sick, giving the Ziyari a chance to live, not just survive. But there was something more powerful than technology or medicine. The Ziyari were no longer afraid. For the first time, they stood tall. They spoke with confidence. They began to believe in a future where they were not forgotten. One evening, Valen gathered the Ziyari people in the central square. He stood before them, his voice strong. "For too long, we have lived in the shadows, believing we were unworthy of help. But today, we see the truth." He looked at the humans standing beside them. "These people did not turn away. They did not abandon us. And because of them, we have hope once more." The Ziyari cheered, their voices echoing across the ruins of their once-forgotten world. Elias watched them, his heart swelling with pride. He had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, but its ability to stand up for those who could not fight for themselves. He turned to Sarah and smiled. "Looks like we just made history." She smirked. "Yeah, and I don't think the council is going to like it." Elias chuckled, but he knew she was right. The Galactic Council would not stay silent for long. But that didn't matter, because now the Ziyari had allies. They had friends, and humanity wasn't going to let them down. For the first time in generations, they stood together, knowing that someone cared for them. The humans had given them hope. They had rebuilt homes, planted crops, and treated the sick. But most importantly, they had given the Ziyari something they had never truly had before: a future. But hope always came with a price. The Council's demand. In the heart of the Galactic Council, ambassadors from different civilizations gathered in a grand chamber. The walls shimmered with holograms of distant planets. But today, all attention was focused on one world: Zaya. A Valkyrie ambassador, his golden eyes flashing with anger, spoke first. "The humans have refused to leave. They ignore our authority." A reptilian diplomat from the Drask Empire nodded. "This cannot continue. They are interfering where they do not belong." The Turkai ambassador, a creature with chitinous armor and sharp mandibles, clicked in frustration. "If they do not withdraw, we will be forced to act." Finally, the Supreme Arbiter, a towering figure wrapped in shimmering blue robes, raised a hand for silence. "Send the humans a final warning," the Arbiter said in a calm but firm voice. "If they do not leave Zaya immediately, the Council will take necessary action." The decision was made. The message was sent. Elias's choice. Captain Elias Carter stood on the command deck of his ship, reading the Galactic Council's warning: withdraw immediately or face consequences. Sarah Monroe, his second in command, crossed her arms. They're not even trying to hide their threat anymore. Elias exhaled slowly. He had expected this. The Council didn't care about the Ziyari. They only cared about maintaining their power. If the humans proved that small, forgotten civilizations could be saved, then the Council's inaction would be exposed. And that was something they could not allow. Elias turned to his crew. "We stay." A murmur of agreement spread through the team. They had fought to protect the Ziyari, and they wouldn't abandon them now. But they all knew what this meant. The Council wouldn't just send threats. Soon, they would send ships. Preparing for the worst, the Ziyari gathered in the central square, listening as Elias explained the situation. Valen, the elder, frowned. "The Council never helped us, yet now they want to control us." Elias nodded. "They don't care about Zaya. They care about their own power." A younger Ziyari named Kale clenched his fists. "Then we must fight." But Elias raised a hand. "No, we do not seek war." The humans had superior weapons, but Elias knew that fighting the Council would make things worse. This had to be solved another way. Sarah leaned closer to him. "Then what do we do?" Elias thought for a moment. Then a plan formed in his mind. He turned to the Ziyari. "If the Council wants the galaxy to believe Zaya is unimportant, then we'll prove them wrong." A message to the galaxy. Elias's team worked quickly. Using advanced human technology, they broadcast a message across the entire galactic network. A hologram of Valen appeared, his voice calm but strong. "For centuries, we have suffered in silence. No one came to help us. No one cared if we lived or died. But humanity did." Images of human engineers rebuilding homes flashed on the screen. "They did not ask for wealth. They did not ask for power. They only gave us what we had lost: hope." Then the message changed. Footage of the Galactic Council's warning appeared, showing their demand for the humans to leave. Valen continued, his voice sharper now. "The Council ignored us for generations. Now that we are rebuilding, they want to take control. Is this justice?" The message ended with a simple question: who will stand for the forgotten? The galaxy reacts. The message spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, small civilizations, the ones ignored by the council, began to speak out. They shared their own stories of suffering. They praised the humans for doing what no one else had done. Even larger civilizations began to question the council's authority. Why had they abandoned so many? Why had they done nothing for the weak? The council tried to silence the message, but it was too late. The galaxy was watching. The council's next move. Back in the Galactic Council's chamber, chaos erupted. The Valkyrie ambassador slammed his fist on the table. The humans have turned the galaxy against us. The Supreme Arbiter sat quietly, deep in thought. Finally, they spoke. Then we must remind them who holds true power. The council sent a new order. A fleet of warships was dispatched to Zaya. If the humans refused to leave, they would force them out. The calm before the storm. Elias stood at the edge of a Zyari village, watching the stars. Sarah approached him. The council is coming, aren't they? Elias nodded. Yes. And we'll be ready. The humans had fought for the Zyari once before. Now, they would have to fight again. But this time, they weren't alone. Because the galaxy was watching. And the Forgotten were finally finding their voice. The stars above Zaya shimmered like diamonds, peaceful and undisturbed. But deep in space, dark shadows moved. Warships from the Galactic Council, coming to force the humans out. On the ground, Elias Carter stood with his crew, watching the sky. They're here, he said. Sarah Monroe, standing beside him, narrowed her eyes. How many? The radar screen blinked with red signals. The answer was clear. Too many. A message from the council. A hologram flickered to life in front of Elias, displaying the stern face of High Commander Reinl, the leader of the council's fleet. His silver uniform gleamed under the cold blue lights of his ship. Humans, this is your final warning. His voice was sharp and emotionless. You have violated council law by interfering with a non-recognized species. Withdraw immediately, or we will remove you by force. Elias folded his arms. We're not leaving. Reinl's expression did not change. Then you leave us no choice. The hologram vanished. Above, the massive warships shifted position. The invasion was about to begin. The Zyari refused to run. Fear spread through the Zyari villages. Mothers clutched their children. Elders whispered in worried voices, and warriors gripped their crude weapons. Valen, the Zyari elder, looked at Elias. If we leave now, will they spare us? Elias met his gaze. They don't care about you. They only want control. Kale, a young Zyari, clenched his fists. Then we stand and fight. Sarah nodded. We're not letting them take your home. A clever defense. Elias knew they couldn't defeat the council fleet in a direct battle. But they didn't need to win. They only needed to hold out. We make them hesitate, Elias said. We make them look like the villains. The humans and Zyari worked quickly. Using human technology, they created holographic shields that made villages appear empty. They set up communication jammers to disrupt enemy signals. And most importantly, they kept broadcasting their message to the galaxy. The first attack. The sky lit up as the first energy blasts rained down. The shields held, but cracks began to appear. The council's warships moved lower. Soldiers in dark armor descended to the surface, ready to seize the land. Elias and his team stood at the village entrance. We hold the line, he ordered. The first wave of council soldiers marched forward. But then, something unexpected happened. They stopped. The galaxy watches. Across the galaxy, millions were watching. Elias's team had activated hidden cameras across the battlefield. Every move the council made was being broadcast live. On distant planets, small civilizations who had once been ignored saw the truth. The council wasn't here to help the Zyari. They were here to crush them. Protests erupted on major worlds. Leaders began questioning the council's rule. The council soldiers hesitated. They had expected a simple mission. They had not expected the entire galaxy to be watching. The fleet stands down. High Commander Reinl stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the situation unfold. His officers were growing nervous. Reports were coming in. Several powerful civilizations had begun demanding an explanation. "Commander," an officer whispered, "if we attack now, the galaxy will turn against us." Reinl's jaw tightened. He could crush the humans. He had the firepower. But would it be worth it if the Council lost its power? He took a deep breath and gave the order. "Pull back the ground forces. Do not engage. Victory without war." As the Council troops retreated, a cheer erupted among the Scifi. They had expected to fight for their survival, but in the end, they had won without a single battle. Valen turned to Elias, his voice full of gratitude. "You saved us." Elias shook his head. "No, you saved yourselves. You made the galaxy listen." For the first time in history, the Scifi were no longer forgotten. They were free. The battle had ended before it even began. The Galactic Council's fleet had pulled back, unwilling to risk a war under the eyes of the entire galaxy. The Scifi were free. For now. Elias Carter stood on the hills overlooking the village. He watched the Council ships disappear into the night sky, but he knew this wasn't over. Sarah Monroe approached him. "They're not done with us," she said. "They just need a new plan." Elias nodded. "We have to be ready." The Council's hidden strategy. Far from Zaya, inside the Council's grand chamber, High Commander Reinl sat with the other leaders. Their faces were cold and expressionless. "The humans made us look weak," one counselor hissed. Another slammed his fist on the table. "We must take control of Zaya before it becomes a symbol of resistance." Reinl raised a hand, silencing them. "A direct attack is no longer possible. The galaxy is watching." A long silence filled the chamber. Then, Reinl's lips curled into a dangerous smile. "But there are other ways to win." The betrayal. On Zaya, the Scifi celebrated. For the first time in centuries, they had hope. Elias and his crew worked on improving their defenses. They strengthened the energy shields and upgraded the communication system to warn them of any danger. But they didn't expect an attack from within. That night, as the twin moons of Zaya shone brightly, a group of Scifi warriors slipped into the human base. Their leader, a Scifi named Vosk, carried a small device, a council-made beacon. He placed it near the human's main power source and activated it. A silent signal shot into space, alerting the council. Vosk turned to his warriors. "The humans mean well, but they are bringing us danger. The council will never allow us to be free. If we push them too far, they will destroy us. This is the only way." He didn't know that Kale, the young Scifi warrior, was watching from the shadows. Kale's warning. Kale ran through the village, his heart pounding. He had to warn Elias. When he reached the human camp, he found Elias and Sarah studying a map of the area. "You have to leave," Kale gasped. Vosk sent a signal to the council. "They'll be here soon." Elias's face darkened. "How long do we have?" Kale shook his head. "Maybe an hour, maybe less." Sarah cursed under her breath. "We can't fight them off again. Not like this." Elias turned to his crew. "We don't run. We expose them." Revealing the truth. The humans quickly set up their broadcast system. If the council wanted to take Zaya by force, then everyone in the galaxy would see it happen. As the cameras activated, Elias stepped in front of them. "To everyone watching, this is the truth." He played the footage of Vosk placing the beacon, proving that the council had manipulated the Scifi from the beginning. The message was sent across the galaxy. Millions watched. Millions began to question the council's rule. The council's last move. In the skies above, the council's fleet arrived once more. High Commander Reinl's voice echoed over the communication system. "You have defied us for the last time." The warships charged their weapons. It seemed like nothing could stop them now. But then, something unexpected happened. A message came from a powerful galactic leader, one of the largest civilizations in the galaxy. If the Council attacks, we will no longer recognize their authority. Another leader joined. We will not support a government that destroys the weak. One by one, civilizations across the stars turned against the Council. Rhinal's officers grew pale. "Sir," one of them whispered, "we're losing control." For the first time, Rhinal realized the Council wasn't feared anymore. They were exposed. With clenched fists, he gave the order. Fall back, victory, and a new future. As the warships left, the Scifi gathered around Elias and his crew. Valen, the elder, placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "You have given us more than just protection. You have given us freedom." Elias smiled. "Now you must decide your own future." For the first time, the Scifi were not just survivors. They were a people with a voice, and the galaxy would never ignore them again. The warships were gone. The Galactic Council had been forced to retreat, humiliated and weakened. The Scifi people stood victorious, but their journey was not over. Elias Carter stood at the heart of the village, watching the dawn break over the horizon. It was a new day, not just for Zaya, but for the entire galaxy. Valen, the elder, stepped beside him. "You have done the impossible, Elias." Elias shook his head. "No, you did this. We only helped." But freedom was only the first step. Now, the Scifi had to build a future. Rebuilding Zaya. Over the next few weeks, the humans worked side by side with the Scifi. The old, crumbling buildings were repaired. The land, once abandoned, began to flourish again. The humans shared advanced farming technology, helping the Scifi grow food faster than ever before. Kale and his warriors trained daily, preparing to defend their home if the Council ever returned. Even the youngest Scifi joined the effort, eager to shape their new world. For the first time in centuries, Zaya was alive again. The Council's last warning. One night, as Elias and his crew gathered for dinner, a message arrived. The face of High Commander Reynold appeared on their holoscreen. "Do not think this is over," he said coldly. "You may have won today, but the Council never forgets." Sarah crossed her arms. "They're scared." Elias nodded. "They should be. The galaxy is watching now." The Council could no longer hide in the shadows. The truth was out, and it was spreading. An invitation from the stars. A few days later, another message arrived, but this one was different. A representative from the Galactic Federation, a powerful alliance of free planets, had sent a request. "The Scifi people are welcome to join us." The message read, "You are not alone anymore." The Scifi gathered to discuss their future. Valen looked at the humans. "What do you think?" Elias smiled. "That choice is yours. But whatever you decide, we'll stand with you." A future of their own. In the end, the Scifi chose to remain independent, but to work alongside other free civilizations. They would never again be slaves to the Council. Elias and his crew prepared to leave. Their mission was over, and new worlds needed their help. As they boarded their ship, Kale stepped forward. "We will never forget what you did for us." Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then do the same for others. When the weak cry out for help, answer them." Kale nodded, determination in his eyes. The ship's engines roared to life. As they rose into the sky, Elias looked down one last time. Zaya was no longer a forgotten world. It was a symbol of hope, resistance, and freedom. And thanks to humanity, it would never be ignored again.